the EQ Video Tip. I'm your host, Eric Forsetter, and as always, it's great to have you back for another terrific show. Before we jump in, let's review the goals of EQ Video Tip. Welcome back. We've got a great show today, and it comes to us from Stacy Nash. She's going to talk about decision fatigue and how to make better decisions despite uncertainty. We have so many decisions out there today that we need to make. It makes it very difficult for us, and the more decisions there are, the more that it weighs on us, and the more difficult it becomes for us to truly make those hard decisions. Stacy's got a bunch of tips on how to make those decisions and to avoid decision fatigue. Let's jump in and review some of Stacy's tips. Tip number 1, prioritize. Make a list of what's important and all the different priorities that you have, and then set that to a prioritized list. Once you do that, you can go through the pros and cons of each one on the list. But first thing you need to do is make that list so you have an understanding of what's out there, rank them, and then the pros and cons of what needs to be done or not done depending on those decisions. That will get us to the first point so that we're not trying to make 25 or 30 or 100 decisions at once. So remember, prioritize a list, and then pros and cons for each one. We'll get to tip number 2. Tip number 2, now that we have that list, take a time out. Believe it or not, it's important to actually step away from what you're doing, all those decisions, to give your mind a chance to relax, recover, reset itself, and know what it wants to work on. Once you do that, it will give you a chance to be more focused on exactly what you're looking for before you make your final choice. So take a moment, spend 5 minutes or maybe even 30 minutes away from that list, walking, doing something else, crossword puzzle, reading, something to take your mind away from the priorities of the list so that when you go back, you'll have a fresh look at what's going on. Tip number 3, set a time limit. And it's so important to do that because the more that we have decisions out there, the more it weighs on us and that we keep thinking, well, is this right or is that right? So set a time limit, put a boundary on each different decision. Some maybe you can decide over the course of a week, some maybe over the course of a couple hours. But set the time limit, make that decision, and then go with it, because it's important to set a time so that you don't overcompensate on the decision fatigue. Yes, you're going to make some wrong decisions, but we all do. That's part of life. You make mistakes. What's more important is that you take those decisions and you take action on that plan as opposed to worrying about what to do. So set a time limit for each of them as part of your list. Our next tip, ask for advice. Before you make that final decision that's weighing on you, you might want to ask advice of someone who's been through that before. It's important that they may have faced those challenges and may offer some perspective that you haven't thought of. Again, that doesn't have to be your decision, but at least they'll give you other opinions to think about what you're going to do. So take a moment, ask for some advice before you make that ultimate decision. Our last tip, embrace the unknown. And it's so important to do that because we live in a world with relevant information and potential outcomes, but it's an imperfect world. We don't know what's going to happen. Even the best decisions go wrong. Even our best factors that we have figured out over months and months of deliberation turn out to be the wrong answers. And guess what? We learn more from the mistakes than actually from the successes. So take a moment, think about what the different factors are out there, and embrace the unknown. Let it happen, let it play out, because in the end, it'll only make you better and learn more at what you're doing. That's a wrap for this week's EQ Video Tip. Hopefully you enjoyed the tips. Of course, customize them and make them yours for your team. There are a few more that'll be in the highlights just after this as well. So that concludes our EQ Video Tip for today. Try incorporating some of these tips into your daily routine. But remember, use what works best for you and personalize it for yourself. Thank you always to our great research team for providing us with some great tips today. As always on EQ Video Tip, we want to end with gratitude. So thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.
Here are some resources that you can use if you want more information on EQ going forward. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you.